This is an added segment to the last week's meditation because I forgot to hit the record button for the introduction and the explanation of the meditation that we're doing. So I'll do that. I'm re-recording the introduction to the meditation, and then you'll notice that this video will switch over to the actual meditation. But first of all, I want to mention that the week before, last week, we did a meditation called cessation or contemplation and sensation, which has everything to do with examining our thoughts during our meditation practice. So the meditation object is not the breath or something that we focus on that is working as an object to pull us away from our thoughts. So typically, like if we're using the breath for our meditation practice, we focus on the breath, and then when we notice the thought comes up, or if we get lost in thought or something like this, we note that, we notice it, and then we come back to the breath. It's a way of kind of replacing the thought with another object of concentration, basically, is what we're doing there. But the meditation we did last week had us focus on the meditation object, which was the thoughts themselves. So we look at the thoughts, we notice the thoughts, and then we use that as the object of meditation. We see them, we notice how they might affect us emotionally, or we might notice how they came up. Did the thought come up and then the emotion followed, or did some type of an emotion cause the thought? Also, we might look at thoughts in the area of whether they're a memory of something that happened in the past, or if they're an anticipation for something that happened in the future. And after doing that meditation, I really got involved in doing some research because I had used that for my meditation practice all week. And this is really nothing new. This is basically a mindfulness type of practice. But I had been taking it a little bit further, a few steps further, if you will, realizing that probably the single most prominent thing that determines our level of happiness is that feeling or the feelings of being complete in life is our thoughts and the thinking process and how we are okay with our thoughts. Now, do they promote happiness? Do they promote problems for us? And when our thoughts promote problems, which they do, they are not something that, we can use the thinking process to help eliminate our problems, but all of our problems are brought about by the thinking mind. The difficulties that we have in life are brought about by our reaction to our thinking, the thoughts that we have. Our thoughts make our world. But with that said, we have to remember that that's not who we are. We are not our thoughts. Thoughts themselves, they have no weight to them. They cannot be seen, and they have absolutely no power over us. And we cannot directly touch a thought. It's just something that is not tangible, but yet they come all the time. I like to compare them with the breath. We breathe in, we breathe out, as a thought comes and a thought goes. There's many comparisons. We can, use clouds in the sky as our thoughts, which is a pretty good comparison because clouds don't have any weight to them. Thoughts themselves do not cause our problems, which is something that I said earlier, that thoughts do cause our problems in a way, but it's not the thought that's itself, it's our reaction to it. It's our emotion that we allow to happen as a little bug, as a result to our thoughts. By the way, I'm sitting in my backyard here. I never get a chance to do this. Arizona, early November, and it's just gorgeous out. Just got back from a hike, actually. Beautiful weather. Anyway, little sidetrack there. But if we learn to look at our thoughts very much like a private investigator, I mean, we look at our thoughts in such a way that we don't get involved with them. We can look at them non-judgmentally. Then we can distance ourselves from the thought. And actually what we're doing is, in that process, is not allowing our reaction or a reaction to be a part of the thinking process, to be a thought itself. We are just seeing it kind of in a analytical way. Some people might see it as kind of a logical way, and it is a little bit both, but using thoughts in a logical way is taking care of a problem without any emotion or any self-representation behind it. It's just an analytical thought, like Spock, in the Star Trek show, TV series, or movie series, actually. And but that's the logical. Analytical is more like a private investigator noticing the thoughts and doing it with a little proliferation of thoughts as possible. So we're not looking at a thought and asking ourselves why we had that thought, or, gee, I better not have that thought, I better stop that thought. We are just watching and looking at thoughts. And in doing so, as I mentioned, we distance ourselves from the thoughts. Now, that is the primary advantage of this practice. The advantage of being aware of ourselves, which means our thought process, is that we create distance between our thinking and our behavior, or our reaction with the thought. That distance, that space, is what allows us to distinguish ourselves as observers, and at the same time as we are observed by others. And when we are doing this process, we are actually allowing our true nature to shine through, and that is who we are. We are the awareness that is watching the thought. We are not the thought itself. When it was said that I think, therefore I am, that is not necessarily a true statement. We notice that we think, therefore we are that awareness that is able to notice that thinking process. So I hope you enjoy this meditation. I hope you can use it. As mentioned at the end, in case you don't make it to the end of this recording, I'm considering doing a program, like a full-fledged program dealing with different ways that we can use our thoughts during our meditation practice, and then be able to take that practice out into the world, out into our work and play and our connection with others. So, and if you're interested in that, get a hold of me and I'll give you more updates on that. That will be an online program that I'm putting together, actually, and I would love to have everybody be a part of it. There's room for plenty of people because it will be on Zoom, and the classes will be recorded. If you miss a class, you can receive the recording, just like we've done in the past. So I hope you can use this meditation and enjoy it, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. These recordings go on YouTube, and then they're also used on the Patron site, which many of you are a part of. And so again, thanks, Jim, for pointing that out. And all these meditations and all these recordings are meant to be informative as well as a meditation practice, like usually about a 25-30 minute meditation practice. So this will be, as I said, about a 25-30 minute guided meditation. I'm going to ask you to, relax the body, focus on the breath, and I'll kind of give you some pointers there. Maybe we'll do a little bit of scanning, and I mean, as far as looking at how we feel within the body. And then I'm going to ask you to take a look at your thoughts as the thoughts come up. I'm not going to ask you to create thoughts. I don't want you to go in and see what kind of thoughts you're having, like kind of like an investigator would do, and go out and find thoughts. I'm going to ask you to look at the thoughts that come up when you're not intently focused or concentrated on the breath. And when I talk about the breath, I often point to the nose, because that's where a lot of people feel the breath. They feel it right there. Some people feel it around here, or maybe in the throat or in the chest or something like that. But I'll come back and refer to that too. So please make yourself comfortable. Please close the eyes, or if you like, you can leave them open and gaze a few feet in front of you. I think the majority of meditators enjoy closing their eyes because they get a chance to go within a little bit more, shutting down the senses a little bit more than normal. But some people, they get drowsy immediately, and so those people might like to have their eyes open a little bit, keep the light shining in. And I've run into a few students that were just fearful of having their eyes closed. And those people, I was always hoping that they would keep coming back so that they could lose that fear. But a lot of those people had trouble meditating. Lack of trust in practice, lack of trust in themselves. But with the eyes closed, I'd like to ask you to just take a little bit deeper than normal breath. Notice how that feels. And for many of us, this is the only time that we really got a chance to relax yet today. You might be sitting on a cushion, you might be sitting on a chair, it doesn't matter what you're sitting on or how you're sitting, as long as you're comfortable. You want to have your chin slightly lifted. You can place your hands anywhere you like. It's always helpful to place the tip of your tongue right above the roof of your mouth, where your front teeth, your top teeth meet the palate. And try to breathe through the nose if you can. Nice and easy. We're never trying to manipulate the breath. We're just letting the breath flow on its own. We don't want to be too concerned about the thoughts, but I would like to ask you to bring your attention to your breath at this moment and see how that feels. And see how you do by keeping your focus on the breath as you breathe in and breathe out. kind of get an idea of how many breaths you can breathe before the thoughts come in. Just take a moment and ask yourself if thoughts have come in since I asked you to focus on the breath. For most of you, they likely have. Just a few very light thoughts, perhaps. Even the thought of, I wonder if I'm doing this right, or the thought of, what part of the breath should I be focusing on, or that kind of thinking is still a thought. So we have to include that. But the more we do this practice, the more our thoughts settle down, and the less we have to contend with. We become better meditators and our concentration becomes better. So do that again. Focus on the breath. Focus on every moment of the inhalation and the exhalation. Notice where you feel the breath. And as long as we're aware of the breath, it might feel like we're manipulating it, but just try again to breathe as natural as possible. Now, many of us, we're noticing thoughts that come up. And they might not be harmful thoughts. Some of them might be some thoughts that we had earlier today, some of the same thoughts. In other words, habitual ones. Some of them could be new thoughts, especially if meditation is new to us. We might be thinking new thoughts about how strange it might feel or something like that. Hopefully, how wonderful it feels and how relaxing it might be. But the key is not to get tangled in those thoughts and to realize that those thoughts are not who we are. When it was said that I think, therefore I am, that was not helpful for somebody that is self aware, because in that self awareness, they realize that the thoughts are just thoughts. Just like a breath is the breath, just like a sound is a sound, and it's really a part of a sensation more than anything else, part of our senses. Very useful, something that we would not want to live without, but nothing that identifies us as who we are. We don't smell ourselves and say, oh, that's who I am. Or we don't hear something that we do and say, oh, that's me. I mean, that is us making a sound, and that is us making a smell, perhaps, but that's not who we are. And it's the same way with the mind. We think, and then that thought vanishes. Everything is impermanent, especially our thoughts and our thinking process. It's reported that at times when a person is nearing death, that they exclaim that they can notice every detail of every thought in the mind. This isn't necessarily for everyone, but for some people, they have said this, that they're so in tuned to what's going on within them, just like if they're hearing something or seeing something. They're so drawn to their thoughts that they realize that they're just that there are just thoughts. Maybe it's something that the person knows that these thoughts will be drastically changing soon as they entered that moment of death. Or maybe it's they feel like, well, maybe this is something that I should really pay attention to so that I don't identify with it at the time of death, which probably would be a good idea. Or we could do that now. And I realize that the more I talk to you as you're meditating, the more uh, thought stimulating it might be. So I'm going to remain quiet here for a few moments, maybe up to 5 minutes. And I just want you to focus on the breath, and as a thought comes up, acknowledge it, and then come back to the breath. This is something that many of you have been doing for years, but I want you to ask yourself if this is a thought related to the past or the future, or if it's just a present moment thought, maybe fantasy or something like this. Those three categories, past, future, or present moment. Acknowledge that and then come back to the breath, whatever you feel comfortable with the breath. And start with the breath right now, and then try this for about 5 minutes. Okay, at this moment, ask yourself if you're focusing on the breath or if you're thinking. The instructions were to focus on the breath and then notice the thoughts as they come up and then let go of them, let go of the thoughts, and then come back to the breath. And was this easy or hard? That creates a thinking process right there. Now bring your attention back to the breath. Notice the top of the inhalation. Notice the bottom of the exhalation. Use the top of the inhalation to stabilize your posture, just like when you breathe in, there's a string attached to the top of your head that's actually lifting the body up a little bit, lifting the head up a little bit, making the body strong. And then as you breathe out, use that portion of the breath to completely relax the body, even while you're holding that posture. Breathing in, strengthening and stabilizing the posture, breathing out, relaxing. Now, while I was coaching you to do that, were you able to stay on the breath? That was about 30, maybe 40 seconds of coaching. And I'm allowing you to, or helping you to really stabilize and work with the breath a little bit while you're listening to me. There might be some subtle thoughts in the background going on while you're doing this. I hope you're continuing doing it. Breathing in, stabilizing the posture, breathing out and relaxing. Just continue doing this while I talk. And so this just helps stabilize your posture while you're focusing on the breath and using the breath to relax the body. And so you're staying with the breath to a certain extent. And you can do this yourself. But the point is that after a while, the mind gets tired of trying to reach out and do its own thinking. And the mind will actually shut off if you are persistent with focusing on a different object rather than your thoughts. We're not trying to stop the thoughts or eliminate the thoughts. We're just trying to understand that they are not that important to us right now. Just breathing in, stabilizing the posture, and breathing out, relaxing. try that on your own for a few moments. Really working with the breath, using the breath in that way, using it to really be a part of your practice at this moment. Really working with the breath. Now just simply ask yourself if your thoughts have slowed down at all. They may or may not have. If the thoughts have sped up, it means that you're maybe getting tired of focusing on the breath. Or it may mean that something has come into the mind where you feel that's important to think about, or the mind is dead set on entertaining itself in the area of thoughts. If that's the case, just apply a little bit more pressure on the idea of focusing on the breath. Notice the top of the inhalation, the middle of the breath, and the bottom of the exhalation. So every time you breathe in, there's the top. You breathe out, there's the middle of the breath. You breathe out all the way, and then it's the bottom of the breath, the exhalation. And then when you breathe in again, there's also the middle again that you pass through. Middle, top, breathing out, top, middle, bottom. Just try that for a few moments. We're looking for liberation from identification with the thoughts. We'll meditate for about 5 more minutes here. Again, bring your attention to the breath. Notice your breathing. Notice the top of the breath and the bottom, and whatever interesting aspects of it you can notice. And again, as a thought arises, if it arises, just notice if it is something to do with the past or the future, or if it seems to be something that's happening in the present moment, and then we'll discuss it after the meditation. Okay, again, bring your attention to the breath. Take a little deeper than normal inhalation. Nice deep breath for some of you. Notice how that feels within the body. See if that wakes you up a little bit, maybe from some kind of drowsiness. Do this a few times, a couple of nice deep breaths. And if you like, you can bring your hands together in front of your heart chakra. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. May we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. May we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or any difficulties that we might face in life. Open your eyes if you want to and bring yourself back to the room or wherever you might be. So thank you everybody for following that meditation with me. There was quite a bit of guiding, a couple of periods of silence, where you can work with things a little bit, and it's kind of a technique that we've used in the past, but usually it's either guided or not, and this was kind of a mixture of both. And the idea is to be able to, I'm just simply pointing out that if there are thoughts coming in, we can be a little bit more persistent and use the breath in a little bit more, fundamental way as far as staying with it, noticing the breath more intently, and setting our intention a little bit more. Basically what I'm conveying in a meditation like this is what's going through my own mind lots of times. Like if I'm sitting in meditation and there's a lot of thoughts coming up for whatever reason, if I notice that, and in my mind I notice that I have to apply a little bit more something here, and that's usually paying more attention to the breath, breaking it into segments like that: top of the inhalation, middle of the inhalation, and the bottom, that type of thing. And that's a technique that a lot of teachers, including the Buddha himself, used, to not get drawn away with the thoughts. And of course, the danger of being drawn away with the thoughts is that we get in the habit of letting that happen, which is something that many of us do all day long. We just follow the thoughts. And pretty soon we start relying on it and depending on it. And when the thoughts aren't there, it feels like something isn't right. It feels like this isn't normal. I should be paying attention to these thoughts that actually don't mean anything for the most part. And so the best way around that is to understand our thoughts, and by understanding them, then we can let them go, not be so attached to them. And that means to recognize what kind of thoughts they are. So I asked you to look at, is the thought pertaining to the past or is it pertaining to the future? Sometimes they can almost seem like the same thing. Or is it a present moment kind of thought? I mentioned fantasy. Fantasy is like when the mind is tired, there's something that isn't related to the past or isn't related to the future. It's just a fantasy, like a dream, like a daydream that comes up for us. And that is very common. and it feels like it's present moment. But a present moment thought can also be us just resting in the present moment, noticing a thought, and then coming back to the breath. And that can feel like it's present moment as well, because we're not, as soon as we notice a thought, we're just letting it go like a cloud or something in the river, and we're coming back to the breath. That can feel like present moment mental activity as well. We can think about the future. One of the problems I have personally is fixing things. My mind will go into the future on a project. Like I got to mow the lawn tomorrow. Oh, it's new lawn. It's a new grass seed, so I have to sharpen the lawnmower blade so it doesn't pull it out of the lawn. That's just an example. It could be the type of thought I could have, but and these are the types of things, but we owe it to ourselves to be familiar with them, to recognize them, to understand them. Any comments or anything from anybody else about questions on thoughts? Maybe something I might be able to help with. Maybe back looking at the logical, the psychological, and the pathological thoughts, something along those lines. Anything from anybody? I'll take this moment to sip some water.
It's to your point. It's hard to it is hard to sometimes push back the negative thoughts, but I mean we all have them, and I guess it's okay to have them. I guess it's how long we let them fester, how much we let it sort of plague us. That
Yep.
That's in our control. So it's important to you can't avoid having them, but you can't let them consume you either.
Right. Exactly. The all of us walk around down the sidewalk day by day. Everybody's actually having a conversation in their own head. And it might be a conversation they don't want to have. They're having a conversation with themselves. They're talking to themselves in their head, and sometimes it's noticed, sometimes it isn't. Um, but to know and to be able to have control these thoughts, and just like you said, Tim, to be able to set them aside at will. Like kind of hitting a switch on a wall, being able to turn them on, and you seeing them as useful and turning them off when they're not needed. And to a certain extent, we do that. We all do that a lot. And the example I gave a little while ago is like we might go to work or something and have an important meeting, and before leaving for that meeting, something real important happened at home that's very personal, and we give ourselves permission to forget about that for a moment or two while we're in this important meeting, because we don't want that interfering with what's happening. And we most of us have that ability to do that. And then when we come back out of that meeting, then we think about that other personal problem that we might have. That's just something that we can do, but it goes way beyond that. Like you said, we have choices, and I think the more we meditate and take a look at these thoughts and actually recognize them, work with them, kind of an agreement, like shaking hands with the thoughts. I know you're there, you're my buddy, I can use you, but you know, uh, we don't need you right now because I want to go inside and see what's there. More like kind of like a psychological look at ourselves. And I think meditation is a great tool for that. It's it's basically mindfulness. That word mindfulness has to come up sooner or later when we talk about this practice. it's being aware of our thoughts, which really leads to mindfulness. Being aware and knowing that we're thinking and what we're thinking. The idea of letting go, but what are we letting go of? We're letting go of the persistent nagging thoughts that some of us have. And once we can do that, life settles down. It's not that we're going to eliminate our thoughts, but we can use them more wisely, outside of meditation and possibly inside meditation. Toying with the idea of doing a program based on this type of meditation teaching, and more geared towards taking a bold step and taking a look at our thoughts, and in this way, and looking at them a little bit more deeply, kind of like what we were talking about last week. But I'll bring that up, and it probably wouldn't happen until maybe the beginning of next year or something like that. And I'm going to figure out a way for everybody to be a part of that. So, like, especially you people on Patron, I would like to see you a part of it. And I'll give you more information on that as we go. So thank you. And if you're going to say goodbye, thank you so much for being here. Thank you.